Welcome to Athletes, Entrepreneurs, the Alumni Journey. I'm Rob Finkelstein, founder and CEO of Alumni Direct. We've created a platform where we help alumni to network and connect through their affinity groups, whether it be college alumni, whether it be business alumni associations, fraternities or sororities, or athletes, and giving them an easy way to network and connect with each other. And this show, Athletes, Entrepreneurs, the Alumni Journey, it's basically, we look to teach and inspire athletes that there is life after sports. There are a lot of challenges right now when people do transition out of sports, whether it's mental health, financial literacy, or just finding their way. And so we've come up with interviewing collegiate athletes, professional athletes, and just getting their idea about journey. We're really excited today to have Josh Copeland. And when we have Josh on here, this guy is pretty dynamic in speaking. So it's hard for me, but I can learn a lot from him. How you doing today?
Oh, hey, how you doing, man? Thank you for having me. I love what you're doing, Rob, with the whole community aspect of it, and I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to get this thing going.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, thanks for being on. So, Josh played college football at Buffalo University, or we talked about was it Buffalo University or University of Buffalo?
I was University of Buffalo.
Okay, see,
Yeah.
he told me this beforehand. I forgot. I'm
No,
sorry.
it's all good. It's all good, man. It's the same place, so
That's
it's
right.
all
It's
good.
it either way. So
Yes.
he played football at University of Buffalo, and then when he got
Mhm.
out, just working with a lot of youth, doing different types of tutoring programs. But ultimately, today he's a motivational speaker, and we'll talk all about that later. But I always like to start the show and ask, talk about playing sports growing up and how it helped to shape your life, kind of going from growing up through school, through sports, going into high school, and then ultimately to college.
Yeah. I think, man, sports plays a big part, and it played a big part of my life. I have four brothers growing up, and so we're a big baseball family. And so as a way, kind of with five boys, as a way to keep us from fighting, and getting us and keep us out of trouble, my parents put us in sports. And so baseball was our first love, and we still talk about that to this day. We still follow them at, MLB. And then I gravitated to basketball and football. So I played all three growing up, and it was great. It was a way to, like I said, for one, keep us out of trouble. But then also, sports teach you a lot of life lessons and a lot of how to handle adversity, how to, be self-motivated, hard work, dedication. So it teaches you all these things. So it was great, kind of, and it molded me to like the person I am today, because I think about things a little differently than I would say. And I didn't really notice this until I kind of got out of
Yeah.
sports and I was working in the world. Like the way athletes think about things is a little differently than, let's say, the average person, because we have to think about things in like a solution based way.
Right.
Right. So it's not like we don't focus a lot on the problems. We focus on what are the possible solutions and then kind of go about it that way. So I think it's a way of kind of reversing it. And so I really learned. So I think about things a little differently, but it helped in a tremendous way, making me who I am.
Yeah, no doubt. And I say that too. I was a runner in high school and college,
Hmm.
and same thing. I mean, just all the practice and just the preparation and just all the different skills. Like you're mentioning, the facing adversity and the leadership skills. A lot of
Hmm.
things that athletes can bring to the table. So let's talk about it. I always ask this question:
Yeah.
when you're growing up, did you
Hmm.
dream of being a professional athlete, and if so, which sport?
Yeah, 100%. 100%, man. And when I was like in elementary, it was baseball. I wanted to be a professional baseball player. Like I said, my family, we were real big in baseball, and we were pretty good. And so I would love to have been a Major League Baseball player. And then when I got to high school and started getting recruited for football, I wanted to do both. I wanted to be Bo Jackson was my favorite base. He was my favorite athlete. So I was like,
There
man,
you
if
go.
Bo can do it, Dion did it a little bit. So if those guys can play both, I kind of wanted to follow in that footsteps. So yeah, but professional athletes all the way across the board, like baseball and football was definitely one.
Yeah, no doubt. My running joke that on each one of my podcasts, I say that I want to be a Major League Baseball player, which I did.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I didn't have the talent. So I'm doing what I'm doing today.
Yeah, no, I mean it's funny because like it's such a different level when you get to like that, and being good and being athletic and being good as a sport is like kind of like one thing,
Yeah.
but you got to have the mental game. You have to have, and sometimes it's the right situation. You got to be in the right school. You got to be in the right high school. So it's a lot of factors that go into just, but obviously talent wins. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? But it's a little different factors that kind of go into that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So let's talk about college. One of the things that we're really focusing on, again, talking about athletes transitioning ultimately out of sports, whether it's out of college or professionally. Were there things that they did at Buffalo when you were there to kind of maybe like the curriculum, not just like a one class kind of thing, but helping athletes to see the bigger picture and kind of teaching them, what it might look like afterwards? Did they do anything like that when you were there?
Yeah, I think for when I was there, we did a lot with like they had people come in and speak about careers afterwards, and like helping you job interviews, like do mock job interviews, helping you develop a resume, things like that. And I think that's pretty standard from what I hear, like the different athletes I talk to. It's pretty standard across the board about kind of like what colleges offer like back then.
Right.
Now it's a little different. Kind of think NIL deals, and people are talking more about the transition, so they're really talking about building a brand more now. But back then I graduated college in 2011 was my last season. And even then it wasn't like that long ago in like the big scheme of things, but it was
Right.
in like the athletic world. So, like 10, 11 years is like a long time in athletic world. And so I think things change, but yeah, now back then there was a big talk on, you're an athlete. A lot of companies love to hire athletes because like the things you're saying, you're a leader, you can handle constructive criticism, you're hardworking, you're dedicated. So a lot of those things they kind of pushed, to kind of help you kind of develop who you are outside of, sports.
Yeah, that's good. And I think you're right. I think it's changed. It's getting better now, but
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the athletes I've talked to are just it's rough. I mean, whether it's a bandwidth issue with the schools or I mean they're focusing on the athletics, but we want to help make an impact with that. I mean, we've talked about trying to go in athletic departments, and I talked about it a little bit offline, but just to try to create additional curriculum to help these athletes out because it's such a challenge, and you're dealing with it all the time with talking to other athletes and all that. So one of the other areas that we also talk about is alumni engagement. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's a real, I guess, well, it'll be a second question I'll ask you about networking, connecting. But
Yeah.
when you were at Buffalo, and then let's say we'll fast forward to today's too, so it's kind of a two-part question. Was there involvement with alumni coming back? And I don't mean just the typical golf tournaments, but
Mm-hmm.
more like you were talking about the careers, like were alumni coming back and talking to the different athletes across the different sports about different opportunities and ways to work together?
No, not a lot, not a whole lot. I mean, outside of if you were a professional athlete, you would obviously come back and talk about, kind of what you, and
Right.
be able to interact with the players, current players, and they ask you a bunch of questions. But that wasn't really like set up by the school. That was just them coming back, and kind of hanging out in the locker room for the spring game or practices or whatever. But yeah, no, not a whole lot of like alumni came back that were kind of doing like everyday jobs,
Right.
that like not, and I don't know. And obviously everybody's has their own schedule and
Sure.
everybody's working across the country, so it's kind of hard. But I would love to see something, and this is why I love what you do, because I would love to see something where like it's a community network, and like there's stuff that people in like, so current, let's say University of Buffalo football players can connect with former players about what they're doing in their career, because as you know, right, sports have 100% retirement rate, so everybody retires. So you know what I mean, like everybody retires at some point, and
Yeah.
for the majority, 98, 99% of all athletes, it's they're not playing after college.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like they're not playing after college. And so there's a small percentage that go from high school to play college, and on all levels, D1 through 2, 3, NAIA, whatever the case may be.
Right.
Um, but as far as that, like connecting, because sometimes like college is it. Like that's the end of the road for your competitive athletic career. And you're 24.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like 22 at the most. Well, now 24, but
Right.
with COVID and all that. But you're 22 to 25, and like you're kind of out into the real world. and you have to use all these skills but you don't know how to use it. And so, but no, sorry, I kind of went on a little roll there, but to
No,
answer your question, no, to answer your question, no, they really didn't do anything to bring to get that engagement back. And that's one thing I wish that they would do, not just at Buffalo, but across the board, like the whole NCAA kind of wide.
yeah. Yeah, I agree, and I think and it's even across all sports, because it could be that, and that's kind of what we talk about, like with like our athlete community center, where you could be a former football player and you're interacting with the former baseball player, the tennis player, the golfer, the sports. It's you have that athlete DNA, you have that stuff in common, that common community, so you're kind of working together. And I've talked to I was talking to one agent, and it was crazy. Her athlete player was in the NFL, and he wanted to go back to his school, and they kind of shunned it, which I don't get. And I just it's something that like talking about networking and connecting. We were talking to one agent, and he said the best time to network and connect is when you're still playing. But most people don't, because either they got that tunnel vision or they're not thinking about it, or don't know how to do it. So talk a little more about that from your perspective.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I think as your current, or when you're playing, you're kind of so focused on being the best athlete you can be that you kind of have blinders on to all the other avenues and things. And I think now it's changing because of NIL. And so you're trying to develop a brand, and a lot of schools talk about brands, and part of branding is networking and like your social media presence and things like that. So I think athletes now are a little bit more conscious of kind of the networking, the importance of it, because you want to get brand deals, right? You want to be an ambassador for some, so you have to work on networking there as a current athlete. But back then, even 5 years ago, it was you're so focused on sports and trying to be the best, so you're not acknowledging everything around you, and not maximizing the opportunity of being the privilege of being a collegiate athlete and everything that comes with it, right? Whether it's alumni engagement, whether it's the community around you, getting involved there. It's a lot of times you kind of miss the opportunity to kind of set yourself up for when sports end as a current athlete, because you're just not thinking about it.
Right.
And the school is not really pushing on a major way, how do you develop these skills and how do you transition to life after sports, because they kind of it just ends, right? It's just it's like you do this thing, and whether you played the sports from when you was 5-6 years old as a kid, and then right when you graduate it just stops,
right?
Or you know what I mean, or not even when you graduate, when your final game of the season, it literally stops. And now you're kind of in the same, you have the same mindset, you're in this new world that you've never been in, and you don't really think about connecting until you need a job, you know what I'm saying, like the professor, and you're like, oh snap, let me call anybody I can that was from University of Buffalo, whatever school you went to, and if you can do that earlier, you can set those things up to have things in position when you're done. Because one of the biggest misconceptions, and one of the things I hated, even as an athlete, it never really sat well with me. But now, in the world I'm in, I challenge people when they say this, that you don't want to have a plan B because it takes away from plan A, right? They tell everybody you don't want to have a plan B because it's going to take your focus away and all that. But I challenge it, and I tell athletes all the time, I said, what happens when plan A runs its course?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like what happens when you do achieve everything you want to achieve? What happens then? What happens when let's say you make it professional, and the average NFL career is 3.5 years. So let's say you make it NFL in football case, you make it there and you play 3.5 years, you made, let's say $2 million or whatever the case may be. I'm just throwing out a number.
Right.
And now you're 25 and now you're out of the league. Because that's the average, right? 25, 26, you're out of it. So now you have another 60 years of living, you know what I mean? And that you haven't really prepared for at all. So now you're scrambling. And a lot of athletes, when they get done, they feel like they're a step behind everybody else.
Right.
Because no, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, before I get started to interrupt you there. What do you think it would make a difference would athletes pay attention, and now you're even younger, but in high school, if there were programs, and obviously the parents would be involved too, where they can maybe start helping, at least putting it somewhere in their mind, so that now, if it again is brought up to me, even though they have the blinders on in college and then ultimately professionally, that maybe it would make an impact if they were taught a little bit earlier? Like, do you think you as an athlete, would have you potentially listened, at least in the back of your mind, or?
Mm, that's a hard one because I speak to high school athletes all the time, and some of them don't listen. And you know what I mean? But I think the hard is it's you're not kind of telling them for now. You're telling them so they would know when it happens down the line.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
like, so obviously, yeah. So like, I probably wouldn't have listened because as an athlete, like you're like, I'm gonna be that 1%.
Yeah.
So it's like whatever you're talking about is for everybody else. Like I'm the 1% that's going to make it, especially if you're anywhere decent and you're getting looked at by any
Right.
college. You're like, yeah, no, I'm going. You're thinking past college. I'm going straight to the pros, right? You know what I'm saying? Like college is just like what you have to do,
Right.
in the athlete's mind. So like your mindset is like, all right, I'm already in the NFL. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm already counting my money. I already know what I'm going to buy, stuff like that. But I think I think if they had a program where in a curriculum
Right.
where they forced the college or high school athletes to take a course
Right.
on life after sports, because now it's a course, and so you can test them on different things, but now you're forcing them. It's in front of them all the time. You know what I'm saying? Even if they don't want to, it's in front of them. So now you are providing a curriculum in place, even if it's for a 4 week, a month, they can meet you, or a semester, whatever it is.
Right.
Now they're forced to do it.
Yeah.
And then now, in like, as opposed to just a one-time thing with somebody coming in talking about life after sports, now you're forcing them.
Right.
And whenever it happens, now they're like, oh man, I took a class on this. You know what I'm saying? Like they at least told me something. And so I think that'd be, to answer your question, I think it would help out a lot.
Yeah, I think it's that's a great point. And it's a great idea too, as we talk about approaching schools in their athletic departments, because it's the repetition. So you're right. Like I think even if they're so focused on the sport, but if they have to take it as a class and they're taking it, over a semester's time, and maybe there's a intro to it, and then there's a round two that they take, maybe one in the beginning, one later in their collegiate years, because I guess all that, the 1% or a tenth of a percent that makes it, the other 99% think that they're going to be that in that 10th percent. So everybody's not paying attention, right?
Right. And I think you're right. And I think if you do it, you're forcing them to think about life after sports.
Right.
And if you force them to do it, let's say like you have a project of, okay, what do you want to do when you're out? Like, how do you create an LLC? What's the EIN number? How do you create a business if that's what you want to do? Or what are steps you need to become a lawyer if that's what you want to do? So like literally forcing them to map out their life outside of sports in a classroom setting.
Yeah.
I think that'd be huge, because once they leave the classroom, they're not thinking about it.
Right.
And I hear all the athletes all the time, well, I don't have time. Well, you kind of do, but I get it, time management, but you're like, I don't have time to think about this. But if you actually have it as a class and force the athletes, kind of like first year experience, right? Where like they force all the athletes, or not all the athletes, but like the whole newcomers to the school to take this first year experience class where it teaches them about the school and all that. Like, you could do that for athletes and force them to do that. And now that will take the onus off the university. So athletes can't come back and say, well, you didn't teach us this. You know what I'm saying? It kind of makes it all kind of easier in that transition.
Oh, for sure. So you heard it here first. Josh and I are going to create this awesome curriculum.
Oh yeah.
We're taking it all over the place.
Yeah, we're gonna shop it. We're gonna shop at the schools, because I think that's one thing. Like if you do it, like I know we're joking, but like in all seriousness, if you do it, I think schools will pick up on it, because that's something that they don't have to think about.
Right, and part of it, I think, also just especially when you can bring in like guest speakers of just
100%
people, in that mental health space or the financial literacy and all that, that definitely helps out. I think there'd be some real good things with that. Talk a little bit about, you mentioned it briefly, but NIL, name, image, likeness. Kind of give me your thoughts, positive and negatives.
Oh, I absolutely love it. And I think it's kind of, I don't say like the Wild West right now. Like everybody, like you're just trying to figure it out. You know what I'm saying? You're trying to figure it. But I love it because it's making athletes think about the brand a lot earlier.
Right.
And also it's making partnerships, because I mean, like, like I said, I went to Buffalo. We wasn't a major D1 school. You know what I mean? Like we didn't like we wasn't really getting partners and things like that. Like the amount of money you're getting your school paid for, you're getting a little monthly stipend to take care of your rent if you live off campus. But that was about the extent of it. So like you still struggled as a college athlete it across the board because you still like you couldn't work. You know what I mean? So like you couldn't really you can get a summer internship, but even you still had to work out. And so like you're behind when you graduate as far as working in business experience because you just don't have any.
Yeah.
And so but whereas the regular college student, they can take a full schedule and then they can work as well and make some income, you know what I mean, on the side. So I love the fact that now you can kind of take ownership of it and you can make some money and kind of build your own brand because it's going to help for that 99% that don't make it.
Yeah.
They at least have some money that they made in college and then it helps build that afterwards, right? Obviously with social media followings.
Right.
But what I would say, if one thing I wish they would do, and this is just me personally, I know this is not going to happen, but this is just my personal thoughts, is put a cap on how much they can make that they can earn each year.
Right.
And put the rest into an account for when they're done playing. So they still have access to the money. Right. But now it's like, okay, when you graduate here or when you're done or when you leave the school, you have you let's say if you sign a $30,000 deal with some school, right? They give you $30,000 a year. Okay, cool. Let's take 20 of that and you can play with it. We're putting 10 each year into an account that's going to be for you when you leave the school. You still have access. So now you're not only helping them now, but then you're also providing a safe haven and a cushion for when they're done to figure things out. So that's what I wish they would do. But everybody thinks NIL, though. You think of all the major D1 schools where they're getting 6-7 figures. That's not the case for everybody. You know what I'm saying? Like some people, some people are getting like clothing deals with the brand and just getting some free clothes, and that's fine. You know, so it's not as the possibility is there, but not everybody across the board is getting that $50,000, $70,000 deal.
I agree. It's kind of like making it more glamorous. I mean, and I like what you're talking about. It's almost like creating a trust account. For these people. And I think it's great too. I think the some of the things that I've heard from the negative side of it, and I always say too, this is like young people in general, but just knowing how to, you've got this windfall of money, let's say, coming in and how to manage it. Hey, you got to pay taxes on it. You got to do your And somebody was telling me a story, kind of sad. There was one athlete, they got a deal, maybe like a $30,000 deal. And, so the athlete and his friends kind of, blew it out. And then ultimately he lost his scholarship because he had a scholarship, but he lost it because he made that extra money. And it's like this, and now all of a sudden, because they spent all the money, now they spent the money, there's no scholarship. So I guess there's certainly a need for education on it, of teaching the athletes, even at the high school level, because that's kind of, where it's all starting now too.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. I think now, because now what you're taking a professional athlete mindset, because you have to manage all this money that you're getting, endorsement deals and things like that, or your salary. And now you're taking that mindset and you're expecting an 18-year-old person, 19, 20 years old, to do that on a college campus. Right. Like you're just around college students. As a professional athlete, you get money and you're around professional athletes. So like you can kind of learn how to manage your money if you pay attention. And they don't even do that good job of it your first contract because you're so young and you get millions of dollars, right? But you could be around vets that help you out with, how to manage your money, give you a good bookkeeper, things like that. But in college, you're just around college students and you're like, man, I'm getting 30 grand on top of my scholarship. Of course I'm gonna go buy shoes. Of course I'm gonna blow it. Of course I'm gonna go buy a car, because it's like, what else am I gonna do? So I think the education piece is key. And you're right, starting in high school, because now when they get the deal, they'll kind of have some things in place.
Right. Yeah, no, definitely. So let's talk about transitioning out of sports. And so I want to talk a little bit about like your transition out of sports, like, once it was over, after all those years of playing all the sports and football, now you got to go into the real world, so to speak. So talk a little bit about that, and then kind of a follow-up to that would be maybe giving some advice too of how to kind of handle that.
Yeah. Everybody's different when they like transition out. But for me, I really struggled because my whole identity was tied up into like who I was as an athlete because I played it for so long.
Yeah.
And everybody that I met from when I was like 6 years old to 25, outside of like my family, I met through sports. So like this whole community around me and the people that I was meeting with, I met through sports. And so that became who I was. And I didn't know that I even had to develop me as a person outside of sports. Because like I said, my whole world and your whole world was sports. So it was very difficult for me to transition out of it mentally. And I did a lot with mental health. So like I kind of battled depression and anxiety my whole life. But sports was a good way to kind of, I don't want to say cover it up, but it was a good coping mechanism because if I'm tired, I go, I can work out, or if I'm frustrated, I can go tackle somebody. You know what I mean? Or if I time alone, I can go lock myself in the gym and shoot, or lock myself in the batting cages. So there's these built-in mechanisms that when you're stressed out and you have real bad anxiety, you can kind of go to and kind of ease your mind.
Right.
And when you're done, those things are you're kind of lost because you don't have the structure of a practice, a school, the teammates. You don't have the camaraderie with your teammates anymore. So you're kind of in this world for so long, and then it just stops, like we talked about earlier. And then now you're kind of figuring it out without the help of coaches, without the help of your teammates, without people who are kind of like-minded and going through the same things. So I moved back home, and I felt like I was the only one going through the stuff I was going through. And so it was very, very difficult for me to kind of figure out my way. And I started abusing alcohol as a way to kind of cope with the things I was going through. And I was never a drinker. So I was always the designated driver. I didn't have my first sip of alcohol until I was 24.
Yeah, you
so
and me.
I was, yeah, it's right. So I was like the designated driver, but when I was done and I was completely lost, I was searching.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to address the certain insecurities and feelings and things that's like the embarrassment, the shame of not going to NFL kind of thing. And I didn't want to address that. So by being drunk, I didn't have those feelings and I was numbing myself. And so I was like a functioning alcoholic for, let's say, 3 years when I was like just drunk every day, all day. And that affected me. Like I couldn't really keep a job, and I had a college degree, but I couldn't keep a job. I was bouncing around, which made it even worse because now, like for the first time in my life, like I felt like I was failing, and I never really experienced that because sports, you have adversity, but like you can battle through it, and there's a reward at the end.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's like, okay, or you have instant feedback. It's like, oh, if I didn't play well this game, I know exactly what I need to do, and I get another chance next week, or I get another season, to fix the wrongs. And so you can constantly work on. But when you're kind of just out there in the world and you're kind of free falling, if you will, you got to figure it out, and that's a very difficult thing to do. So I really struggle with that transition, and it was, so my advice to athletes would be to, like we was talking about, figure out who you are outside of sports.
Yeah.
Like that when I speak to athletes all the time, I say, who are you if all this were to disappear? Because one day it's going to.
Yeah.
So who are you if this was to disappear today? What would you do?
No,
And then
that's good. Yeah.
yeah, and now, but it just gets them thinking because it's like, okay, well, I was like, and now try things. I said the beauty of current being an athlete now is like, this is not what your full-time gig is. So you have the freedom, not sports, because sports is your full-time gig, but like trying and expressing and exploring and experimenting in what you like. That's a hobby. So now experiment in all the hobbies you want to do and what piques your interest. And then when you're done, you have 3 or 4 hobbies that you like, maybe I like to make a career out of these. So now you are at least have piqued your interest into what you want to do outside of sports. And it's not just like smacking you in the face when you're done and you're like, I have no clue. I never thought about it.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I think it's that's great. Like having a plan. You talked before about plan B, and then even Yeah, so one of the recent shows we did, the person just talked about find what you're passionate about, which just kind of
100%.
resonated with me.
Yeah. And it's hard because like, well, as a current athlete, you're like, well, I'm passionate about sports. And you're like, you are, right? And you are, and I get it, right? So I just tell them, I always say, if it was to stop today, if you walked out of this room and you couldn't play sports anymore, what would you do? And then that gets them thinking about, okay, well, shoot, I guess I would, if I like video games, I would try to make creative video games. Okay, that's fine. So now write down your top 5 things you would do if sports ended today, and then figure out a way to kind of learn more about those while you're still playing.
Yeah.
Because now you're kind of experimenting on somebody else's dollar. You know what I mean? Like you're kind of experimenting on somebody else. So now you can figure it out. So when you're done, because if you wait 3 or 4 years to when you're done, and now you're trying to figure it out, now you're experimenting on your own dollar, because now you're not really getting a job, you're not really getting a career field. Now your career changing, and all that is just opportunity and money, right? And so that you're so now try to learn as much as you can on somebody else's dollar. So that way, when it's on your own, when you're out there, you have an easier transition and you're not wasting a lot of money trying to figure it out.
Yeah, no, I mean, the key word just said, while you're still playing.
While you have to while you're still playing, because everybody has an off season.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, even if I understand not during season, but even in the off season, in spring ball, we practiced 3 days a week in the spring. So that's 2 days a week, or we're during the weekday, but that's 3 or 4 days during the week where like you can kind of figure things out, right? And so now you got to manage your time. So I always tell them it's so important to think about it while you're playing,
right?
And it won't take away from how much you put into your sports. I tell people, I mean, it won't, and that's the biggest fear, is that, oh, if I do this, I would lose focus. No, because I tell people, I was talking to a university about a couple of weeks ago, and I was talking to athletes, and I told her, I said, you know what? If you get a regular job, you're putting into a 401k. If you have a salary position, you're putting into a retirement plan, right? And I was like, that's standard, right? If you have a salary position, you're standard. And now if you have your own business, that's different, but like standard across the board, right? You have a retirement plan where you put in money every 2 weeks, your company matches it, and it goes into an account. And that's an account for when you stop playing or when you stop working.
Right.
I was like, now you put into that every week, every 2 weeks, every time you get paid, but it doesn't affect how you go about your day on a daily basis. You know what I mean? No matter how much money you put in it doesn't change how dedicated you are to your job. It doesn't change your daily responsibilities. It doesn't change how you show up or what you do. It's just a cushion. And so I said, think about now preparing for when you retire. And I think when you put it like, as we're going to retire, that's a little easier pill to swallow than like you're going to get cut. And nobody, you know what I'm saying? Like, or nobody's going to call your agent. Like, that's an easier pill to swallow. Like, sometimes you're forced into retirement, and sometimes you can walk away. Very few people get to walk away on their own terms. Majority of people are forced into early retirement at sports.
Yeah, I like looking at it that way too. You're right, because it's not you're gonna have to retire at some point. So, and I like that analogy of just you're kind of putting money away. So here it's like as you're playing, you're kind of banking your thoughts, ideas, passions, hobbies, everything kind of putting together so that now you can go to the bank and withdraw when you're out in the real world.
Yeah. And I mean, it could be something like you have a journal of just things you like to do, just something, right, that you can look back on, and it doesn't have to take much time. So that's kind of what I push. But I think that, like you said, the important thing is to do it while you're playing.
Right. Right.
And then utilize all the resources that are there.
Yeah, definitely. So let's you started I guess once you're out now and you're going through some different things, but then you started working with kids. Talk a little bit about that, and then ultimately, share what you're doing today with your motivational speaking.
Yeah, so I think I fell into the career that I had. I used to work at a community college for a TRIO program, and TRIO is just a bunch of grant funded positions by the U.S. Department, and they're geared towards helping first generation let's say, low income, at risk demographic of students. So it's a lot of inner city, a lot of rural areas that these high schools are, these community colleges or centers are getting these funds to kind of put a program. So I was working with 5 or 6 inner city schools, and we would do like tutoring, after school tutoring, helping with ACT prep, things like that. And that came at a time when I was completely lost. So when you talk about find your purpose, find your passion, I kind of, it helped me because I was able to help students, and as I was struggling, so it helped me to help them, because I had to keep showing up for them every day, regardless of what I had going on. So it kept me kind of, get my mind kind of in the right spot because I had to go and help them. So that truly helped. And that's why, and I tell people when I talk to students, you have to find, sometimes you fall into kind of a career path by trying different stuff.
Yeah.
And being open-minded to try different things. And when you're an athlete, it's NFL or professional athlete or bust.
Yeah.
Like high school kids now is like D1 or bust. It's like, no, there's a whole other world out there that you can still be involved in the sport, still play it, still participate at a high level. It's just not what you think it is.
Right.
And so, yeah, so I bounced around from job to job. And before I got, at the community college, and like I said, I really struggled, and I had 3 things that happened to me, and I just kind of briefly kind of describe them for you, so for sake of time. But I was a busboy at a restaurant prior to me working at the community college. So let me backtrack a little bit. So I was at the college, I kind of bounced around, and I became a busboy at a restaurant. And I was really humbling because now I'm back in my hometown, and my hometown is not the biggest home. It's not small, but it's one high school.
Right.
In one middle school. So like everybody knows everybody, right? You know what I mean? And like I have 4 brothers, so everybody knew my family. And so I'm working as a bus boy at this restaurant, and I'm bussing the tables of the parents who I went to school with, their kids. I'm bussing the table of my classmates. I'm bussing the tables of high school kids who was in middle school, and they watched me play. And so it was really humbling experience to kind of be, I don't want to say at the top of the world, but like everybody was kind of looking up to you, and then now like you're busting the table.
Yeah.
And it's like I don't want to say fall from grace, but it is a humbling experience when kind of like you're kind of grabbing their food and the trash off the table, and like you was on ESPN a year prior, you know what I'm saying, like 2 years prior. So it's humbling. Another thing that kind of go along with that, like as I was doing that, I was really going down the downward spiral. So I was drinking, like I said, a lot, and I got a DUI going home one day from a bar. And I thought I knew all the local cops, so I was like, man, this is a local cop. Like I'm good, you know what I mean? Like they're gonna walk me home. I'm a mile from my house. They're local cops, and it was a state trooper, so I had a DUI. And that hit me because now I lost my license, and so now it's just a downward spiral of feeling a shame and embarrassment because like I know I didn't drink. And so the depression's kicking in even more, anxiety's kicking in even more. With alcohol, I start gaining weight. So now I'm embarrassed of how I look, as well as embarrassed that I'm not in the NFL, as well as all these things that I'm dealing with mentally. So it's a lot of factors that just kept on piling on that I didn't know how to deal with or address. And the last thing that kind of changed it for me, I had a real bad panic attack one day. I was smoking and drinking and doing some other stuff, and it just was all new to my body. And my body didn't know how to deal with all these different outside substances coming in and messing up my balance, right? And so one night we went out, and it's kind of, I laugh at it now, but at the time it wasn't, but I was drunk, I was high, and my friend gave me an edible because like weed and the THC kind of made me paranoid. Yeah. And so we're going out to the bar. He's like, hey man, like we're going to try to, meet some ladies. Like you need to calm down. You're kind of paranoid. You're kind of scaring everybody away. Here goes the edible. And so he gave me edible, and he was like, don't eat the whole thing though. And so, but I was drunk and I was high. So I ate the whole thing. Oof. And so now I'm high, like a head high. I'm got a body high with the edibles, and I'm drunk. And so we're driving home, and like, I just remember a strange feeling in the car. I was like, this ain't good. Like, I just felt something. I was like, I don't know what it is, but I've never felt like this. And I don't like how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And we get back to my friend's house and watching the movie The Matrix. And that's probably the worst movie that you can watch in the situation I was in. And so watching The Matrix, and there's this scene with like this metal octopus looking thing is like attacking a mothership. And I saw the metal thing like crawl out the TV. And I was like, oh, this is not good. I was like, oh, this is not good. This is
That's a
not
little
good.
scary, yeah.
Yeah. And so now then it starts crawling faster at me. So now I'm freaking out and I get up and I'm running out of their house. And I live in Ohio and it was January. So it's like cold. And I'm running down this college campus in a full-fledged panic attack because I think these metal things are coming to get me.
Yeah.
And so, and it just, I mean, it was just kind of like a perfect storm of all the substances I had in my body, all the stuff I was feeling like myself, the embarrassment, everything just kind of came to a head in that moment. And I thought this thing was coming for me. So like, I'm freaking out, full-fledged panic attack. Don't know who to call. You know, it's just a real bad situation because of I wasn't willing to accept and address the fact that this is where I am now.
Right.
So I was trying to do things to kind of hide the fact that I was going through a lot of this stuff. So just a long story short, so I kind of woke up from that and I was like, I had to do stuff for myself now. And so that's when I started working at the community college and started at the same time I was doing that. And so it's kind of helping me kind of come out of the depth of depression that I was in. And I tell people when I speak, because I had to really do stuff and I had to be selfish in a moment because I had to figure out who I was. I had to figure out what I wanted to do. I had to, in the moment, I was always the designated driver. In the moment I needed somebody, nobody was there.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, like who's the helper, nobody helps the helper because everybody they're the helper.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Everybody expects them to help people. Nobody expects the helper to need help.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because
Yeah,
you're always there for people. Yeah, in some situations, right? And so, and it's a tough situation to be in. So I tell people this, I tell people there are moments in life when you have to be selfish so you can be selfless.
Yeah. No,
And that's why I advise every athlete, be selfish in your high school and college years. And it's not saying like I'm always right. It's saying, no, I need to do what I need to do to secure my future. So then I can help my family. So then I can help my cousins. So then I can help the people coming behind me because I figured out who I was and what I needed to do. And I did it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. I mean, that definitely great advice there. So so now you're a motivational speaker. So talk a little bit about that and how people can find you.
Yeah, so I do motivational speaking now, and I talk a lot about mental health and purpose and being the best version of yourself. And I work a lot with high schools, with colleges, with athletes. I do professional development because I think everything revolves around who you are as a person and how you view yourself, and also becoming the best version of yourself mentally will allow you to be the best version of yourself physically, will allow you to be the best version of yourself as an employee, an employer, a boss, a spouse, a husband, a wife. You know what I mean? Like, so when you can be the best version of yourself for yourself, then it trickles out in every aspect and every facet of your life. So that's what I work to do. You can find me on Instagram at learn to cope, learn the number 2 and then cope, COPE. That is my business. I talk about learning to cope is what I do. Facebook, same thing, learning to cope. My website is joshcopelandspeaks.com. That's my website. You can find me all there.
Yeah, that's great. And we'll put it all in the show notes too. I mean, this has been great. I mean, I think you hit a lot of really good points throughout, and you know, we're hoping to more and more to get this out there to impact the athletes. I mean, you know, one at a time, whatever it takes. But it sounds like you're doing a great job when you're talking to the different you know, students at the schools. That's something that's really important and a need for mental health, because there's just so many, you know, sad stories you hear out there. So if we can start turning this around and make a positive impact, you can find us on alumnidirect.com. You can follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook, Instagram, and follow the show, Athletes, Entrepreneurs, the Alumni Journey. We're on all podcast networks and also on YouTube. This has been great, Josh. I really appreciate it and looking forward to having more conversations.
Yeah, Rob, thank you, man. I appreciate it. And I love what you're doing with Alumni Direct, man. I truly do. And athletes, entrepreneurs, I love everything that you stand for because it's extremely like it's needed,
Yeah.
and a platform where athletes come and be vulnerable, share their stories, and connect with other athletes because athletes all go through similar things just at different times
Yeah.
when you talk about transitioning out of sports, right? And so you're going to be there for whenever that athlete needs you. And it can't say at 2 years you'll need it when you're 5. I speak a lot, and people are 45 and they haven't played in 20 years, and they got a family, and they just this is stuff that I never really addressed. So by you addressing this is huge. So yeah, everybody go follow Rob, and definitely subscribe and look, and I'll do my part to push it out on my social media.
I appreciate it. All right. Thanks. Have a great day.